If you don't know, I did a review on a movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey. And boy, did I get some backlash. When I sat down and watched it, I didn't understand any of it. Nothing. It might as well have been in Latin to me. And I put into it, like, from a production standpoint, yeah, I can understand why people think it's great. Musical standpoint, same thing. Concept-wise, plot structure-wise, script-wise, I was like, I don't get how this movie has so much praise. But then a lot of people were like, oh, you don't understand, blah, 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 blah. So part of this is to readdress what my thoughts were on it. And also the other thing is, recently I went to the library. If you don't know, when I heard that like libraries have movies like available to be borrowed and stuff like that, what are you gonna find in a library's movie collection? You're gonna find biopics on, like, the Vietnam War. You're gonna find stuff on, like, Napoleon's invasion. I was pretty surprised, actually. In front of me, I hold a copy from my library of Mel Gibson's Hamlet. And on the other hand, I have a copy of Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, the director's cut. I'm going to question that, actually. Because what I want to do with a video like this is talk about stuff that maybe it's not necessarily with the sci-fi genre, but I guess that this kind of pertains specifically with sci-fi movies. Those movies that you just, from beginning to end, too many questions and little to no answers. And I'm not saying, like, just for me. I'm saying, like, this for any viewer. I'm talking about somebody who's gone into a movie and said, you're not doing a good job in explaining to me what the whole idea behind your art is, And yeah, some movies can have various interpretations, but in their meanings and their moral messages, but I'm talking about, like, the structure itself. And the reason I mentioned Blade Runner and Hamlet, if you don't know, Shakespeare is a very, very complicated author for the modern age to decipher. I actually have a lot of appreciation for Shakespeare. When I first started, yeah, he might as well have been speaking Klingon. I just love it, and as time's grown on, I've grown to love a lot of stuff. The Romeo and Juliet movie with Leo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, at first I thought, this is a horrible idea. And it started to grow on me. But the reason I brought up Hamlet and Blade Runner is, even for a movie with so much Old English, virtually barely anybody can understand, I watched both Hamlet and Blade Runner with subtitles on. I understood more of Hamlet than I did Blade Runner. I am not kidding. I actually watched Blade Runner twice with the subtitles on. And then I went to online to look at the synopsis and try and fill in any of the gaps. Because there was plenty of gaps where I'm like, this still doesn't add up to me. So yeah, what I'm talking about is those movies. Blade Runner, these are just movies that I, for one, have said so much of it just doesn't click with me. Not as much as, like, the various ways, Fifth Element, a little bit. 2001, A Space Odyssey, Blade Runner, those are just three examples. Also a little bit of Ridley Scott's Alien, but that this is not just picking on Ridley Scott. That guy's had enough of people, bashing him. So yeah, how am I supposed to, this is a hypothetical question for any viewer. How is a viewer supposed to be entertained by a movie when they have no idea what's going on? I just posed that question to you. Now, when I saw, Blade Runner, I got from the very start, by the end of the first viewing, I understood what I call the skeletal structure of the film. It's about a bunch of replicant, genetically engineered robots, whatever the heck that means. They're trying to extend their life because they've only got 4 years to live. And they're trying to find the people that created them and avoid the Blade Runners that are hunting them. But, they just the thing is, if by the first time you viewed this movie and you're trying so hard to understand what's going on and you've got the subtitles on and you're pausing the movie, let everything that you've seen sink in, even by the first time alone, if you haven't understood by the end of the first viewing what has happened, then I'm sorry, you've done a very poor job of explaining to people what's going on. And this also relates to, because I know that there's going to be people who are watching this who want to know what my lead into 2001: Space Odyssey is. Tons of people on my review of 2001 were like, it doesn't make sense to you, you're an idiot. And yeah, that's part of the reason why I picked Cinema Simpleton as my movie title. Anyway, they're like, you should read the books, it makes sense like that. If you read the books and the movie makes complete sense, what's wrong with you? It's called a film adaptation for a reason. You are adapting a piece of literature onto the screen, okay? You are choosing what to remove, and you're choosing what to add, you're choosing what to remove from one art form to another art form. Now, I am aware that in the subject of literature, there is so much, like from a narrative perspective, unless you literally have a narrator, nobody's going to understand. Lord of the Rings. You can have so much in Lord of the Rings that just doesn't add up because you didn't read The Hobbit. But the Lord of the Rings, like, how do I explain this? Lord of the Rings, there's so much there that you're meant to interpret it in various ways, I think. But in terms of, like, movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, that was another movie that just, I'm like, I don't understand anything of what's going on. Why is he in a random hotel room? Why did he turn into a space baby? What does the black obelisk do? And yes, people did explain to me what the black obelisk thing does. And then I read online the synopsis of the books where they're like, this is what it actually does. It evolves people to a higher, it accelerates evolution. And I'm like, okay, you never explained that in the movie. You could have done something to explain that. And people are like, oh yeah, it makes total sense because the primates know how to use tools because of the black obelisk after it touches down. I'm like, it does? Because there could have been a random glowing rock or something there, and it's not protruding into their brains or something. You don't see a lightning bolt strike their head and the next thing they do is pick up a tool or something. It's just a black tower. And that's all here's the, that's the only clue you get that it's mysterious or something, that it's something otherworldly. That's not explaining enough for a person like me. Granted, I call myself Cinema Simpleton and Hollywood can only fool an idiot. Like I said, I think that 2001: A Space Odyssey is an art house film. But, a movie like Blade Runner, okay, when they're saying stuff like, they go on a couple times like about, like in the files, they're like morphology, longevity, incept dates. Okay, I know what longevity is. Morphology, I have no idea. Incept dates, I can only guess is the day that they were made or something like that. But how do they apply to the replicants? What is it about them that they want to know? How do they apply specifically to these replicants, and why are they important? And yeah, I'm probably going to get somebody who's like, you read the books, or somebody who's like, watch this different cut. There's like 4 versions of this movie. I think there's like 5. There's the final cut, there's the 1982 cut, there's the theatrical cut, there's the freaking director's cut. I saw the director's cut, that's what the title says. From what I read, though, I'm very much in the dark as much as this movie left me in the dark, and the explanation of what version I saw as much left me in the dark. And, like, with the replicants themselves, like, they do this whole prologue text thing where they're, like, explaining what the replicants all are about. Yeah, that lasts about 20 seconds, then it vanishes, and that's the only clue you get about these replicants. they're supposedly genetically engineered robots made by the Tyrell Corporation. Okay. Except if you didn't tell me they were robots, I really don't think anybody watching this thing would have known that. Why? Well, let's see. They bleed. They have skin. They have emotions. They can, like, produce bodily functions, like have a tear go down them. They dream, supposedly. They can, like, have memories. They can enact violence. They can freaking, like, you know how in Terminator, like, okay, in Terminator, they're disguised as humans, but they've got a they've got a metal skeleton inside them. So yeah, you're going to be able to know it's a robot. But these guys, exactly what part of these dudes are mechanical? Are they just genetically designed humans? Because then they're not at all robots. Like, throughout this movie, they're like, no, they are robots. They're skin jobs. They're skinwalkers or whatever. I'm like, these are either robots or they're humans, and I'm getting mixed messages as to what they are. Like, you can tell with, like, the owl that's, like, floating around that's supposedly artificial. When it looks at you a certain way, its eye goes red. And a couple of times you can tell that there's something a bit artificial in the eyes of the replicants. There is so many scenes in this thing, like, that just, what the heck am I watching? Roy, or Batty, or whatever his name is, Ruger Hauer, I think his name is, who plays the villain replicant, where he goes on, I don't know how you really have a scene like this and not expect somebody to be laughing in the theater from this, you know, emotionally driven antagonist who is running around going like a werewolf in his boxer shorts. And then, like, he just rescues Harrison Ford, or John Deckard's life, just leaves him on the roof, and then just lets himself die. Why? Like I said, this is, like Blade Runner, there's multiple versions of the thing. Some scenes are omitted, some little tidbits are omitted, but there's just so much stuff where if you didn't pick up on this one fact once and remember it for the rest of the thing, then you just lost out an entire plot point. Like Inception. How many people walked out of Inception and said, I have no idea what that movie was trying to tell me about how to go through a dream or something. What the frig is limbo? Why are they, like, all this stuff? And granted, from Chris Nolan's perspective, he's a very psychological director, and the people that sort of did get Inception interpreted it in a various bunch of different ways, and I think that's what he was going for. But there's so much with Inception that, like, you yourself can walk out of and say, I just had more of a headache than I did, like, an adrenaline rush from that movie. So what I wanted to do with you guys is, I have no idea how long this has been. If you have a movie, or a couple of movies that you saw, sci-fi, if they were horror, were they comedy, were they action, something, that you just walked in, walked out, and said, I just spent this money on a movie, and I have no idea what the heck it was about, post a comment, tell me what it was that, like, you couldn't understand anything about it, and, you know, just talk about it. I think that's the idea here. Just have a discussion about these movies that just left you with such like a problematic debate